Hi everyone, my name is Kat Hartwell, and today I'm going to talk to you about the issue of recycling used lead-acid batteries, also known as ULAB, in Agbogbloshie, Ghana. Let's look closer into the issue of informal used lead-acid battery recycling. While I'm specifically examining the problem in Agbogbloshie, the practice of informal ULAB recycling happens in almost every city in most low and middle income countries around the world. Approximately 85% of total lead consumption worldwide is due to the production of lead-acid batteries, which are primarily used in motorized vehicles. The lead found in car batteries represents 80% of global lead consumption and creates large amounts of waste in almost every country in the world. But lead is a profitable commodity, and the informal and often unsafe recycling of lead has become a common practice in many developing countries. The recycling process entails the battery being hacked open, the acid dumped onto the ground, then removing the battery plates and melting them down in an open furnace. Then that is molded back into metallic lead bars that are resold. Lead dust is released into the environment in this process. This issue is important because a study conducted by UNICEF and Pure Earth this year found that 1 in 3 children globally are poisoned by lead. Pathways for lead from ULAB recycling into the human body occur through direct contact with contaminated water and soil, inhalation of polluted smoke and fumes from burning, and ingestion or inhalation of contaminated soil and dust. The WHO and CDC have both declared that there is no safe level of lead exposure. Lead exposure can result in a number of harmful health outcomes for both children and adults. However, children absorb 4 to 5 times more lead when exposed than adults do. A variety of factors make children particularly vulnerable to exposure when lead is in the environment, including the way that children play outside, often close to the ground. This infographic from the CDC on the left illustrates some of the negative impacts that elevated blood lead levels can have in children, particularly affecting their neurological growth and their development. The developing brains and nervous systems of children are more susceptible than an adult brain to lead's toxic effects. Elevated blood lead levels can also be fatal. In Dakar, Senegal, a cluster of 18 children died from what appears to be severe lead intoxication between November 2007 and March 2008 in a community that participated in ULAB recycling. The image on the right depicts the possible health effects of lead exposure in adults, which includes reproductive, musculoskeletal, neurological, cardiovascular, and kidney problems. Lead is a perpetual hazard that stays in the human body, as well as in the environment, and the damage from lead poisoning is considered irreversible. In order to address the problem associated with ULAB recycling, I first consulted with Gavin, an electrical engineer in Boise, Idaho. Gavin's recommendations centered on establishing a standardized recycling network for Ghana, with the advice and guidance from developed countries who currently safely recycle batteries. Gavin also thought that it would be beneficial to incentivize the Ghanaian government to make the process safer for those working in the informal recycling setups in Agbogbloshie, and to legitimize their work through a formal network. While this may require a substantial financial investment from the government up front, the prevention of lead exposure in communities will save the future costs of cleaning up and mitigating toxic sites. Also, by legitimizing the informal producers, there will be even more opportunities to sell the recycled lead because it will be done following these new standards. Gavin also recommended that the government install monitoring systems to inspect for pollution levels in places where ULAB recycling occurs, and to set up, with the guidance from other countries with experience, an enforcement system for those in violation of the new regulations. My second approach came from Kyle, a public school teacher in New York City. Kyle recommended that the government, along with NGOs working on the issue locally, create a public awareness campaign on the health hazards associated with informal ULAB recycling. This campaign can target both parents and older youth living in the community, as well as workers engaged in informal ULAB recycling. Kyle suggested clearly communicated and heavily visual posters be hung around the Agbogbloshie site and neighboring community. This campaign can be similar to a campaign that was implemented in Dakar in 2008 after the deaths of those 18 children. That campaign proved successful and can serve as a model for this strategy. Additionally, Kyle suggested training workers on new techniques of recycling that are safer and reduce exposure to lead and other toxins. The third approach to the issue of ULAB recycling came from Zarina, a district representative of her neighborhood council in Echo Park, Los Angeles. Zarina's first recommendation was to follow the money, meaning identify the people who are the source of the battery sales and distribution, then implement a regulation that requires the source to take back the batteries and safely recycle them. In doing so, Zarina also recommends these companies be incentivized to train and hire the informal workers engaged in ULAB recycling now, and teach them new safe methods and pay them a living wage. She suggests credits paid by the government to companies who adopt these practices. Zarina also came up with a plan to create an employment program and build a micro-industry by training new safe methods of battery recycling that does not require burning. This will create a new workforce, and companies can hire straight from the program. Finally, Zarina stressed the importance of encouraging innovation in the lead-acid battery industry. To quote her, "We don't want to be talking about lead-acid batteries in 2040 the way we continue to debate coal in 2020. Here are some of my key takeaways from this assignment. First of all, recycling used lead-acid batteries can play an important role in a circular economy if it's being done safely. A current example of this being done well can be found in the United States, where secondary lead accounts for more than 91% of the country's overall lead production. However, developing countries like Ghana need guidance and fiscal support from countries with more resources and experience successfully transitioning to safer recycling methods. They will also need direction and assistance with enforcing regulations and standards and in setting up their monitoring and inspection processes. With some of the regulations and standardization, one challenge will be the impact on the incomes of people who rely on informal ULAB recycling to survive, and making sure they can stay employed and earn a living wage. The government and private battery companies will need to provide social support and help the workers put out by these new changes. Also, we do need to continue to push innovation to make these processes safer and more affordable, and possibly even find new alternatives to lead-acid batteries. Finally, I learned from this assignment that working across different specialties and disciplines leads to diverse solution options that are grounded in different perspectives. Thank you. This is my references page. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation.